Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing Get You Back to Get Them Back. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing Get You Back to Get Them Back. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you need to consider how your ex sees you right now. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 points to consider regarding getting yourself back to getting your ex back. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is remember who they fell in love with. So when we're trying to get an ex back, we need to remember that the relationship which ended was not the relationship which began. It's easy to think back to the time of the breakup. It may have only been very recently, and even if it wasn't, unfortunately, the pain and anguish will shine bright right now. But it's important to look behind that, look into the past, and remember when you and your now former partner were in a long-term loving relationship. Now, if we consider the very beginning of that journey, you and your now former partner would have been very much excited to be with one another, very much excited to date, and very much beginning to fall in love. So this is why it's so important to look back at the person that you were when you first got together. Who was the person who attracted your now ex? You need to get back to that person. You need to remember what you were like. You need to recognize the differences between now and then. Now, yes, of course, you would have grown since that point. Everybody is growing. And you're not necessarily going to be the same person today that you were a few years ago. In fact, if you were, there could be an argument made that you're not growing enough. However, what we're talking about here is the key fundamentals. Not the cherry on the cake, but the basis of who you are as a person. What was it about you that attracted your ex back then? You have likely stopped doing what you used to do. You've likely stopped looking how you used to look. Consider back, compare and contrast. Look at the person who was dumped and compare them to the person who initially got your ex into a relationship. What are the differences? And remember that you need to become the person that your ex fell in love with. Now, yes, your ex would also have grown and evolved, but the key fundamental traits that you showcased during the initial stages of your relationship are also likely to be the key fundamental traits that could get your ex back. Remember the fact that before you and your ex had got together, they didn't know you, and you attracted them to the point where they wanted to be in a relationship with you. Right now, your ex has good and some bad memories of your connection, but they already know you, and it won't take long for them to think back to more positive times. So what you need to do right now is just try and restart those memories in your ex's mind by becoming the person that attracted them in the first place. Remember who they fell in love with. Now, when we consider how we look now to how we looked back then, yes, of course, time will play a part. Yes, of course, we age. Yes, of course, if you were together with your partner many decades, you're not necessarily going to be able to look as youthful as you once did. But what we can do is look our best for right now, making sure our health and fitness is on point, making sure our style is good. That is not affected by age. And whether or not you were together 6 months, 6 years, or 30 years, what we need to remember is that you can still be your best. And be honest with yourself. Was you your best at the time of the breakup? Was you your best during the breakup process in comparison to when you first got together? And I would suggest that you weren't. Now, this isn't just about physical attraction. You need to consider what you were like as a person back then. You have likely stopped doing what you used to do, or maybe you started doing things that you didn't do in the past because unfortunately some of the things that you started doing are actually negative. Think what you can do, what you can change, what you can alter. How can you become a person that they fell in love with once again? Are you somebody who still maintains your desire, your interest, your passion? Are you somebody who still has ambition? Or are you somebody now who is bitter towards the world? There is a big difference. Think back, remember who you were, recognize that for your ex to want to get back into a relationship with you, you need to reattract them. And you can't reattract them via the person that they dumped, because sadly, that person is not a good fit anymore for your ex. But it doesn't mean that you are not a good person for your ex. It doesn't mean that you can't get your ex back. All it means is that unfortunately the person that was dumped is not the person that they want to be with right now, and therefore you need to recognize what you can do and how you can do it to improve yourself. So think back to the past, recognize the person you were, remember the key traits and attributes you showcased, and try and implement them in the modern version of you. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is focus on you rather than them. So when you're trying to get an ex back, there can be a natural thought process to focus on your ex. What have I got to do to get them back? What is my ex doing right now? Who are they with? What are they doing? What are they doing on social media? Where have they been? How are they feeling? Are they thinking about me? All of these thoughts and more will flood your mind. But instead of this, I challenge you to focus on you rather than them. You need to be spending time on yourself, as this is going to help you stop making mistakes. And what I mean by this is if you're focusing on you, then you're less likely to be doing things such as chasing your ex, texting your ex, calling your ex, annoying your ex. Behaving like this is very unlikely to get your ex back, but it is very likely to take place if you're thinking of your ex 24/7. So if you remove your focus from your ex, you're also going to be removing the possibility of you making big mistakes. Now, in most instances, if you've been dumped, I suggest that you should never contact your ex again unless they contact you first. And therefore, we have to recognize that focusing on your ex is literally teasing you every minute of the day into reaching out to them. And if you fall into the general category that I've just described, which is if you've been dumped, I strongly suggest in most instances, never contacting your ex again unless they contact you first. If you fall into that generalized bracket that most people do, then the last thing you want to be doing is reaching out to your ex. You need to be making sure that they reach out to you first. And you're going to fall into that trap of calling them or texting them or waiting outside where they work to try and grab a word. You're going to fall into that trap if you're only thinking of your ex. So start spending time on yourself. Start focusing on you. Start recognizing things that you can do to become a better version of yourself. Additionally to self-improvement, you should be focusing on things such as reconnecting with friends long gone by. Maybe when you got into the relationship which has sadly ended, you started to drift away from some of your platonic friends. It's very natural. You only have limited time. This is one of the saddest aspects of getting into a long-term relationship. You will likely, unfortunately, drift apart from some of your friendship group. I don't suggest you do this, but sadly, it is something that often takes place. So if you have been dumped, one of the positive steps you can take is starting to reconnect with those friends that maybe you lost touch with. Send them a text, give them a call, reach out to them. You know, they're not your ex. You can absolutely do this to friends that maybe you've lost touch with. See if you can try and reconnect in some way, arrange to meet, at least have a call, send some texts. These things and more, again, can take your mind off your ex, but in essence, you're doing something positive. You're reconnecting with old friends, and you never know where that might lead. Imagine if you haven't really spoke to one of your old friends in about 9 months. You drifted away. You reach out to this friend, you have a conversation, and they invite you to a party or a get-together. You go to this party or get together and you never know who you might meet. Now, although you're focusing on your ex right now, you might meet the next love of your life at this party. And although this might not sound realistic to you, it's certainly possible. Even if all you're focused on is getting your ex back, nothing helps more than making new connections. Your ex needs to see you as a dateable individual. And they can only see you as a dateable individual if they was to imagine that you might possibly be dating. So go to parties, go to events, mix with new people, socialise. If things get out on social media, then so be it. That's great, that's fine. Friends of friends can pass information on as well. It's just important that you focus on you and not your ex. What have you got in your diary? What's on the calendar? What are you doing? Even if you're not making new connections, make sure you're doing something and keeping busy. Make sure you're living your life in the right way. Become somebody who always has something going on. Be that person who has something in the calendar booked up every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It might sound like a crazy thing to suggest, but it's certainly possible. Whether you live in a small village or a large city, there are going to be things that you can do and see. And even if you live far away, you think, from the main events, I'm sure you can get there if you really want to. Now, if you want advice and support in trying to increase the chance of getting your ex back, if you want help on moving through breakup recovery and ideas and concepts about what you could be doing to increase that chance of success, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and my final point of today's podcast about get you back to get them back. And point number 3 is sprinkle stardust. So when I say sprinkle stardust, I'm referencing the importance of not just becoming your past self, but an improved version of that person. Like I said earlier on, yes, you need to be focusing on those key traits that attracted your ex in the first place, but we also need to recognise that you should have grown as a person. And this is where the stardust comes in. This is the version 2.0. This is the version of you that attracted your ex with some of that stardust sprinkled on top to really pull them in now in the modern world. And you can achieve this through the ideas and concepts I've already spoke about, including making new connections, showcasing you're a dateable individual, to being somebody who is living their life to the full by having a calendar which is full of events and things to go to. But you also need to be making sure that you're more intelligent, more fit, more healthy. All of these attributes need to be ticked off. They need to be checked off one by one so that you can honestly say to yourself, I'm fitter and I'm healthier. My style is more on point. I feel more intelligent because I've learnt this, that, or the other. I feel more creative because I've tried this, that, or the other. I'm going to new classes, groups, and clubs. I'm spending time focusing on things that I never had opportunity to before, maybe because I didn't have the time to, or maybe because I didn't have the thought or the inclination to. Sometimes when I talk about sprinkling the stardust, what I'm actually referencing is gaining that self-motivation to really propel yourself forward. Do you have the ambition to attract your ex back? Do you have the ambition to reach for the stars? Maybe you were very ambitious in the past, but you've become bitter as life has moved forward. Or perhaps being ambitious was never really something that you would attribute to yourself. Either way, it's absolutely crucial. It's incredibly attractive. It's a really important trait. Whether you're trying to focus on improving your job prospects, starting a new business, maybe you just want to create something within your local community, it doesn't really matter what it is, as long as you have a thought process towards it. It doesn't even have to be as grand as the things I've just suggested. Sometimes being ambitious is just focusing on a goal of something that you couldn't do before, but now you're going to. It might even be you're sorting out your house, you're sorting out where you live, you're tidying it up, you're cleaning it out. You're doing the things that you always said you would do and you didn't. This is the time. Sprinkle that stardust, become a version 2.0, recognise the traits that attracted your ex originally and become better at them and add more to it. If and when your ex finds out about this, through friends of friends, through social media, through the grapevine, because exes have a somewhat uncanny ability to somehow find out about what you're doing and how you're living without the necessity for you to reach out to them. Because as I said earlier, that is not something I'm likely to suggest to you. If and when they find this out, with the pull of my version of a no contact rule, which is what I would suggest you implement ASAP after being broken up with, you can combine these thoughts and feelings that will be put onto your ex via the elements I suggest. And if and when they reach out to you, this is when you can try and reconnect with them. Remember, to get your ex back, you first need to get you back. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.